reminded me, we jumped right into it, but since you're speaking about like your kind of evolution, if you guys can sort of describe maybe where you got started, if you want to talk to your style or the sort of projects you predominantly work on, that I think everyone watching would like to know.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I always wanted when I was a kid, I wanted to be a movie director when I grew up, like from a young age. And I was like, I'd set up action figures on the floor and G.I. Joes and stuff and be like, okay. And then we'd be like, the camera would swoop down here and stuff like that. But as I became a teenager, I, got my hand on one of those VHS cameras, and I got my first job at McDonald's, and I worked there for 3 months until I could afford a camera, bought the camera, and then quit McDonald's. Great company to work for, though. I really enjoyed my time there.
If McDonald's is watching.
Yeah, if McDonald's you're watching, thanks for everything. Yeah, so I did that, and as I really got into music in my late teens, so I was going to shows a lot and concerts, and always would bring a camera with me and whatnot. I was reading a lot of Vice magazine as a teenager and in my early 20s. So I also have to credit Vice for, informing the way I would kind of think about visuals, because some of the work that they were putting out and are putting out is just phenomenal. So, yeah. And, I eventually went to Ryerson for image arts, and I learned, the technical side of things, some of the theory and whatnot. And then it was just a matter of getting out on my own after school and just getting out with a camera and working and trying things and, working a lot of the time, just not even paid gigs, but just going out and shooting stuff and just shooting until I could eventually make it my full-time job. But it was, years of just showing up with a camera and shooting because I love it.
And so how would you describe your style and the projects you mostly work on now?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think my style is, it's really informed by the music a lot of the time. For most of the stuff I do, it's really informed by if I'm shooting a music video, the sound of the music, the feel. But my style is probably a little bit more on the kind of gritty side of things. I like working with a lot of bright colors a lot of the time. I wouldn't say it's necessarily true to life. I kind of like to exaggerate things a little bit and kind of create this slightly Alice in Wonderland kind of alternate universe that it's similar enough to our world, but just a little bit different. That's that's what I'd say.
I like that. Jay, how about you?
How did I get my start?
Yeah.
Believe it or not, Mr. Jonathan Zodwin over here handed me my first camera. I had zero interest in it whatsoever. The long story short, essentially, is I was working in the realm of mental health. I worked in suicide prevention and would do presentations in schools and essentially just share my family's story and do it in a relatable way and then teach communication tactics or techniques to the kids. Because we live in a generation right now where we spend a lot of time through a screen, and that type of face-to-face body language, micro expressions, the tone of our voice, the way we're delivering things is missing at this point. That's a generalization, obviously speaking. And I just got burnt out. I wasn't prepared for it. I thought that burnout was a word that people use that had, crappy time management until I got burnt out. And then John and I were friends through music, actually. By the way, the fact that you just brought your camera to shows probably made you the guy that everyone loved because nobody wanted to pay for a photographer. But if the friend did it, it was the best.
Yeah.
And so John was hosting a creative camp with his company, Socality. And I think there was like 150 full-time creatives from all over the globe. Like there was people from everywhere. And he said, you should come just for the week. You don't have to be the mental health guy. Just come, hang out, do some drum and DJ stuff. You can play some music with his brother, Matt. And on the third day, we were doing a sunrise hike. I'd never seen Moraine Lake before, even though it was on our $10 bill or something. Just never noticed. And then he handed me the camera. He said, I think you should try this. I think you'd really like it. And I was like, that's not my thing. I don't care. He's like, no, I really think you'd like it. And then literally from that day on, I just have not put the camera down. I fell in love with it. And I was like, I'm doing nothing but this and only this. And then I hung out with John a lot and R&D. I just ripped off and duplicate. And then here we are.
I love that. That just like speaks to the community as well. It's like seems really strong in Calgary. How would you describe your style?
How would I describe my style? I think that my description of my style has changed in the last year. I found out this year that I was colorblind. So I have deuteranomaly. So my red cones and green cones, I didn't know this. It answered a lot of questions that I had throughout life of like, why are you wearing that shirt? And I was like, what shirt? What's the problem? That kind of thing we had a lot. So what I thought my style was versus learning that and then changing my style in the last little while, I think that there's a lot of emphasis put on social media. So what is your Instagram or your TikTok or your whatever? What does that look like? And is there continuity throughout it? And so for me in the past there was, and then now at this point I'm going through another phase of kind of self-discovery, realizing like what I'm seeing is not actually what everyone else is seeing or the majority of people are seeing. So how do I get what I'm seeing as close to theirs? So I'm kind of relearning how to do that. So that nothing's skewed, because otherwise I just wouldn't know. But I do really value quality lifestyle work. So in that context, I would say like very bright, saturated, vibrant imagery, very full of life. Even though that's not like the sexy answer, people want to have their own kind of cool, call it Instagram-y style or whatever. I really like that type of thing because in my mind, to get the perfect lifestyle photo, there's so much more that goes into it than just shooting something in natural light, banging off 1,000 photos, spray and pray, and then go home, you know?
Yeah, I imagine maybe there'll be like sequential evolutions over the next 50 years of your career too. Jonathan, what about you? How did you get started and how do you describe your style?
I think just to pick up on what Jay said, I do think we're a constant evolution as creators. So I think it's a good thing that you're okay with just saying, here's where I am right now. Because I think, yeah, Oliver, same thing. I expect this is where you are today. And I expect we'll see a completely there will be continuity, but I think we'll see a different look and feel and, interest, in a few years. For me, Elizabeth Gilbert, the Eat, Pray, Love writer, and she wrote a good book called Big Magic, which I'd highly recommend for people who are interested in creativity. She talks about this idea of following your curiosity instead of trying to find your passion. And I would say that's probably a good way to look at my creative journey. It was just opening doors that were sort of in front of me. Photography was never something I ever set out to do. I never said one day I want to be a professional photographer. This was never on my goal list on my, but similar to Jay, just kind of a few years before, I got kind of dropped into a community of people and got the chance to kind of do the same thing. So my early story is kind of similar to his, just with people that kind of came before me, and got a chance just to experience it. I kind of fell in love with the community, to be honest, not photography per se. It was the other creatives. I was really into writing, still am, but haven't been writing as much recently. And social media was just a way to communicate my ideas and what I wanted to share and my thoughts. And the photography was almost like a secondary aspect of that, which is interesting because in the process, I actually fell in love with photography to the point where I would say today, they are equal. I can gain just as much flow and energy and passion out of just shooting as I would writing something or sharing an idea. And so that's kind of the trajectory. The style has changed quite a bit. I started kind of like a bunch of us, just being in the mountains, doing a lot of adventure lifestyle, kind of Instagram-y stuff early on. And I'd say just my passion now has come more to storytelling, more to capturing kind of feeling emotion, putting more intention into what I create, kind of merging different mediums and styles. So I love juxtaposing adventure with fashion or editorial, or just playing with juxtaposition, and how can you mishmash styles and come up with something kind of unique. And then just being consistent kind of in a look and a feel so that what you create is identifiable. I do think if you're trying to set sort of a, like position yourself, I do think working towards some form of consistency and recognizability is valuable in this day and age. But yeah.
That's interesting. I know one of the first things that struck me when I started working with creatives was that it is a community. Everyone's family. There's like no competition, and everyone just really supports each other.
There can be. There isn't.
I think it's the community you're in.
Yeah. There's a good community in Calgary. I don't know if you could say that about every creative like space or community, but we're fortunate here that is the case.
That's good. Well, I'll watch.